Clock received. So as soon as the clock is taken out of the shipping container, I create a video and send the video to my clients as soon as possible. Sometimes there is damage to the clock, and we need to know if that damage was already there when the clock was shipped, or did it happen during shipping. I just want to make sure that the condition of the clock is documented, and you are going to get the clock back in the same condition that I have received it. This clock looks pretty good. I don't see much damage except for the impulse roller has a little bit of drag marks across it. It's fully wound, so it's a dirty clock. The clock stopped running after it was operating for about 10 years. Okay, next step after I take the glass case off and remove the bellows is look at the manufacturing date on the bellows. Sometimes the clients don't know exactly when their clock was manufactured, and this will narrow it down for them. But the most important thing is to let this bellows come up to room temperature and verify it's good, or it needs to get sent out for refill. This bellows measures at about 26 millimeters. That's a good bellows. So this will save my client a little bit of money. We don't need to send it out to get refilled. Day one of the overhaul. The clock has been taken apart and all of the components have been cleaned. I like to verify that this is the clock that my client sent me. Always send them a video of their serial numbers. And then I just go over all of the components. And if any components appear to need replacement or repair, this is a good time to tell my clients. But so far we have a good looking clock. I don't think anything on this clock needed to be replaced or repaired. The condition was very good. Again, a couple of drag marks on the impulse roller did come out mostly, but there was a little bit of etching. So I do like to tell them, hey, the impulse roller is not perfect. There's nothing you can do about it. I tried buffing out that etching material and it will still work perfectly fine. It's just, it's not like the day it was made. Then again, this clock was also 30 years old. Okay, the balance wheel really looks pretty. Okay, pulley looks perfect. The teeth are in place. Usually or not usually, but sometimes those, the little teeth on those pulleys are broken. The jewels are in perfect condition. The front of the movement really turned out nice. Okay, here we had a screw that had some corrosion on it, and it was on the front of the clock. So what I did was I took that screw and tried to remove as much of that rust as I could, and then I touched up the top of that screw with a new coat of lacquer, 3 new coats of lacquer, and I relocated it towards the back. That way it's kind of hidden by the bellows case. I think it just looks a lot nicer if we don't have a rusty screw in the front of the clock. Okay, everything else looks terrific. There's the lower suspension clamp and the upper. This client did want a new suspension spring, so we're going to take all these components off and install a new spring for him. I did notice that the interior or the exterior surface of the upper clamp has a lot of corrosion on it, or something is on it. So this tells me it was probably rubbing up against the interior of the balance tube. So I'm going to have to make sure that when I reassemble everything, I pay special attention to that tube and make sure that it's poised properly. That could have been why the clock stopped. This is the new suspension spring being installed on the upper regulator clamp and the lower regulator clamp. I think it's very important that the customer sees the installation of new equipment. Day two of the overhaul, we began our assembly, and you can see that the new suspension spring is installed in the balance tube and it is being poised. We are also poising the fork. Looks great. Okay, here I'm testing the alignment of the pulley chain. I'm looking for free movement on the movement, and the movement has been assembled with the fork. There is your new suspension spring with the serial number. What I am doing now is everything has been assembled, it's been wound. We're going to let this run just like this for a day under glass before we put hands and dial on, just to make sure everything is working okay. Day three of the overhaul. So dial and hands went on the clock because on day two, the clock was running for about 24 hours and there were no anomalies that were noted when the clock was working. So it's a good time to go ahead and start finalizing this clock's overhaul. This clock is running about 5 minutes a day fast with weights. So I will add weights, subtract weights. In this case, I'm going to add just about a gram to maybe a gram and a quarter of weights to try to get it to within 1 minute a day or 30 seconds a day. And then I'll make regulations with the adjustment lever at the top of the clock. You'll notice the rotation of the balance below. Those motifs are 30 degrees apart, and I'm getting 17 and a quarter motif revolutions, which comes out to 517 degree amplitude. Pretty good. This is going to be a really nice clock. So it'll take about another 3 weeks or so for this clock to be done. Okay, the clock has been regulating for approximately 92 hours, and we are getting very close to an accurate clock. As you can see, this clock, when I hit this button, you'll find that it is running approximately just under 4 seconds a day fast. Perfect. Now we just need to make sure that it maintains that accuracy. Okay, shipping day. This is exciting. So what I want to do is to just make sure that I push this locking lever all of the way to the right. It gets locked in place. You got to press it pretty hard. Put the door back. And on these 540s, there is also a little screw on the bottom. With some of the 540s, there's a screw on the bottom that you can lock the balance in place. So it's double locked. With a 528, you want to move that locking lever all the way to the right position and then tuck it in under the clock so it doesn't wobble loose during shipping. Okay, so this is the last time to really get a good look at the clock, display to the customer what the condition of the clock looks like before it goes into the inner box for shipping. This clock is 35 years old, and my client tells me this is the first time the clock has been serviced. So that's just a real testament to these clocks that they can run a long time without needing service. Although, if I recall, it did not run correctly for the last 10 years. Maybe he put it in storage and just put off getting the clock overhauled. But this thing's running at over 540 degree amplitude and keeping accuracy of less than plus 5 seconds a day. I think it was closer to 3 or 4 seconds a day. Great looking clock, especially given the age. When you take care of these clocks and you don't use any ammonia-based cleaners on the lacquer, they will last a very long time. What I am doing here, and again, this is something you want to do when you ship the clock to me. The impulse roller is on the left side of the clock. It's kind of hard to see. The fork is on the right side of the clock. You don't want that silver impulse roller inside the fork when it's shipped, because if something bounces loose, that thing is going to tear that fork up, break pivots, break jewels. Keep them on the opposite end of the clock. Clocks that have door panels that come off get parchment paper on the top of the glass door and the bottom of the glass door to keep that glass from chipping. The clock goes into a large plastic bag, and rubber bands are placed around the glass case to keep all of the glass from bouncing around during shipping and getting chipped. The clock goes into the interior box. It's densely packed, but not too dense. You don't want to break the glass, but you also don't want anything moving around. It should be very solid. You should be able to wiggle this around with no movement. And then, of course, bubble wrap on top. The secondary box gets placed into the primary box. This is a 14 by 14 FedEx box surrounded by about 2 inches of styrofoam peanuts along the edges and the top of the box. That's all there is to it. Now the box will ship FedEx to your doorstep.